All right, VikesNow, Dustin Baker, the December 16th edition. The Vikings host the 4-8-1 Colts at US Bank Stadium on Saturday. So don't screw that up and wait for Sunday football. It's Saturday football. Vikings can clinch the NFC North, and the Colts have a 3% chance to reach the postseason. So they're not too desperate because they don't have much to play for, but we shall see on that front. And before I forget, get into my list of 7 storylines, is I think we have this idea or misnomer that's grown throughout the week that the Colts are a bad team, that the Vikings should just stomp and roll over. And I get it to an extent, but I think it's derived from the Colts losing 2 weekends ago to the Cowboys, 54-19. And they're not that bad. And so I want to get that out there that, yes, I do think that Minnesota will win, but the Colts aren't like the 2017 Browns or anything like that. Their offense sucks, but their defense does not. It actually ranks 9th in the industry per defensive EPA per play, 3rd fewest passing yards allowed. So if you're heading to the stadium or watching it at home, don't expect like this just total romp of a bad team. Like, the Colts aren't bad. They're just top heavy on defense and pretty shitty on offense. So it's kind of a storyline of itself, but I want to get that out there for the masses. The first one I think that everybody will be watching for is how the defense looks or plays or responds or is tweaked. Because, after the Commanders win in Week 9, and then, of course, they beat the Bills in Week 10, there was kind of a feeling that, oh, boy, this defense looks pretty good. It's finally hitting its groove. Of course, we would say that, and the opposite happened because the following week, they got their asses beat thoroughly by the Cowboys, and the defense has been pretty shitty ever since. It's not forcing oodles of turnovers like it was through Week 1 through Week 10, and I've said it 100 times now this week, if the Vikings defense, the current iteration, isn't forcing turnovers, then it sucks. There's no other way to dress it up. So it came to a head because they lost to the quote Lions. And they're not even that bad anymore, but the Lions, and even Kevin O'Connell had to address it that there should be some tweaks that should be made. There's not enough time, evidently, to throw the system out and get a new guy, but they can enhance some stuff, which to a lot of us means, all right, are they gonna blitz? Are they gonna play press coverage? What's gonna be the difference? So there should be something different, unless it was all smoke and fodder from O'Connell. But even he, I think, realized that this side of the operation sucks, and it's holding us back, as we saw against the Lions. So inevitably, if O'Connell's telling the truth and he seems like a straightforward type of dude, there should be something different. Now, it helps a lot that the Colts rank 31st in the world per offensive expected points added. So in that vein, yes, it's a very good get-right game for the defense. But I want to know schematically what they do, because if it's just that the usual stuff happens to work against the Colts, fine, we'll take it. But then you're going to get your face kicked in down the road, whether that's against the Giants, who will indeed be desperate. If Rodgers is still playing in Green Bay or Fields is upright in Chicago, you can't get away with playing that shell bullshit defense and then hope for the best. It's going to get exposed. So look for what has changed. What specifically does Donatell tweak, if anything, to make the defense better? The next one is, I hate to announce this, but the Vikings usually play like utter garbage against the Colts the last 2 times anyhow. In 2020, it was Week 2, and it was one of those games where Kirk Cousins just looked like a junior varsity something, and it was nauseating, and, Xavier Rhodes was on that team, and they sort of turned it around in that season. Dalvin Cook had almost an MVP-like campaign, ended up not making the postseason, but that was the worst loss of the season. That year, the Falcons game was a close second. And then in 2016, the same Colts, different quarterback, different coach, they came into US Bank Stadium in Week 15, I think, right about this time of the year. And the Vikings had one of those usual scenarios where they needed certain teams to lose, and then they went out, they get in the postseason. Colts were not here for any of that. They beat the shit out of them 34-6, and it was one of the worst losses in that building. I've been to almost all games in that facility, and that one is a top 3er for, bad vibes walking out the building because it eliminated the Vikings and they looked completely inept. So is this the game where it's done? Is the bad voodoo with the Colts erased? Because the last 2 times they've played horrendously against the Colts. And there's probably Colts fans out there that just think that, this team is a laughing stock because they looked atrocious the last 2 times they played the Colts. Meanwhile, number 3 is the Vikings can win the division. Last week it was coined a t-shirt and hat game, and we should have known to get too cute or to have Jalen Reagor make guarantees. That shit was going to go haywire in Detroit, and that's indeed what it did. Cousins looked personally fantastic. I think he's the one that called it the t-shirt and hat game. But then the rest of the enterprise decided it wasn't going to follow suit. But indeed, the Vikings can win their 21st division title on Saturday against the Colts. Otherwise, if they're on their bullshit and the Colts do the thing, they have to wait and see when the Lions play and if the Lions lose to the Jets. But indeed, this can be the first division triumph since 2017. It's been a long time coming, and they should reasonably do it on Saturday. The next is the return of Christian Darrisaw and Harrison Smith. Christian Darrisaw has been, he got hurt against the Bills, and then we thought it was just a little concussion, and he came back against the Cowboys, and boom, got concussed again. And now they've done the right thing, the smart thing, the sensible thing, and sat him out for about a month. He's been on the shelf for about a month to get his brain right, and that was emphatically the good thing to do because you want this guy to be employed for 12 more years, not 12 more minutes. So he's on his way back. That should markedly improve the offensive line because as much cynicism as we have about the Vikings offensive line, they have probably the best tandem tackles in the NFL, which is, we haven't been able to say that, if not, ever. But that's pretty neat. And then Harrison Smith, we saw how lousy the secondary was or is without him. It's probably why they drafted Lewis Cine, by the way. Against the Lions, nobody could help over the top, and it looked like the Mike Tice Vikings. That's how bad the defense performed, especially the secondary last week. In theory, Harrison Smith should erase that. He should be the patrol mechanism to help the Vikings bounce back against these Colts. So I wouldn't say that health has been restored because there's 5 dudes that are questionable: Patrick Jones, Danielle Hunter, Garrett Bradbury, and so forth. But, even Irv Smith is trending to come back before the season is over. I'm not sure if that means week 16, 17, 18, or if that means the postseason. But Darrisaw and Smith are on their way back, and you have to navigate. Dantzler's another one that's questionable. Navigate these rookie cornerback injuries, Evans and Booth. Let's see, winding down the docket, Yannick Ngakoue and Ifeadi Odenigbo. Boom, they play for Indianapolis. I don't know if you knew that, but they are 2 pass rushers that formerly played for the Vikings on the same team, no less, in 2020 for 5 minutes? They are on the Colts active roster. Ngakoue, of course, starts because before the Vikings, during the Vikings, and after the Vikings, he's a hell of a football player. Ifeadi Odenigbo had one lightning in a bottle year, and now he is a depth pass rusher for the Colts. So they come, quote, home, end quote, to play the Vikings at US Bank Stadium on Saturday at noon. I tweeted this one to start the week. The Vikings drought, the winless streak against the Colts, is their longest by far of any opponent. The last time that the Vikings beat the Colts was 1997. Kirk Cousins was in 2nd grade. Kevin O'Connell was in 6th grade. And that game was actually a springboard to get to the postseason. That was my 2nd year of Vikings fandom. I remember it pretty vividly. But that's the last time. They've lost 6 straight times to the Colts. That's kind of why I brought up the storyline about always playing like garbage. This isn't normal. They usually, through the span of history, beat teams a lot more frequently like this. The second longest winless streak against a certain opponent is the Chiefs. The Vikings haven't beat them since 2015. So that's the next one that you'll focus on after they vanquish the Colts winless streak. Justin Jefferson, that's another one to monitor because he is 133 yards away from the Vikings receiving record, and he and Tyreek Hill for the past month, if not 2 months, have been playing hot potato with the receiving yards lead, and nobody really cares too much. It's kind of fun to watch because you'll look up at the leaderboard for week blah, 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 and then boom, Tyreek Hill is up by 70 yards, and then 2 days later, you go look at it, and there's Jefferson, who's up by 30. So these guys are playing complete hopscotch trying to win the receiving yard sprint, and I think it's particularly fascinating because if one of them's going to win it, unless Stephon Diggs gets really funky and freaky in the last 4 games. If one of them hits 2,000 yards, and whoever that is, and they, of course, lead the league in receiving yards, I think that guy will get some MVP votes. You probably saw on the channel here where we talked to Benjamin Albright. He kind of laughed when I mentioned that. He said, nope, ain't no wide receiver defender ever getting the damn thing. But I do think that either Hill or Jefferson could get a few MVP votes if they hit the 2,000-yard plateau and lead the league in receiving yards. So what kind of game do we get from Jefferson? Is it one of those quiet ones where he has like 105 yards and we're like, oh boy, he didn't do too much today? Or is it a 200-pluser? We've seen those. Or is it one of those ones where it's mysteriously just, 20 or 30? Because, yeah, he's good for those about once or twice per year, it seems. All right, and then finally, this isn't even really a huge storyline, but the Vikings usually have their way with Matt Ryan, especially when Zimmer was in charge. Teams led by Matt Ryan, in this case the Falcons, were 1-4 against Minnesota during the Zimmer era. So if it doesn't feel too nasty playing against Matt Ryan, it's because A, he's getting old, he's not very good, and he's never was really good against the Vikings in the first place, at least not in the last 8-9 years. All right, I predicted on Vikings territory that the team wins 40-21 over the Colts. I think that will be their version of an emphatic victory. I do think they bounce back. I noted, too, that this is the easiest as it gets the rest of the way. So if there's ever going to be a game where they win in a blowout, it's going to be this one because the Giants are going to be in complete savage mode trying to hang on for dear life to get into the postseason, probably in the 7th seed. And then who knows what fresh hell awaits us at Green Bay and at Chicago because, as you know, records don't matter when you go to those venues. That's all I got. I will be back, let's see, perhaps Sunday, but definitely Monday to go through whatever transpires in Vikings Colts. So, Skol, baby.